How about Native Americans? I mean, we came and took their whole ass land, bitch, and wiped out half the population. Where is their reparations? What about all the Asian people who were thrown into concentration camps? How about the fact that half of this bitch used to be Mexico? What are we doing about that? You can't have a platform that you run on that says, I want to solve race relations in America, and then only talk about one group of people who have been disfranchised by white supremacy in America. How y'all doing? Only Black Girl here, checking in to have a little chat with y'all. Thank you for hanging in there on my little hiatus, y'all. I've had a lot of shit going on in my personal life, and just thank you for hanging in there with me. I wanted to talk today about a topic that has been coming up a lot now that there are 792,000 people running for president. A lot of topics have come up, right? Because every time there's an election, these people announce that they're running for president, and then they announce the one giant issue that they're going to tackle that we know they're not actually going to do when they become president. You know, things like Elizabeth Warren is trying to wipe out student debt, and some homeboy is talking about universal income. And the topic that's come up more and more is this idea of reparations. Black people have been talking about reparations for pretty much ever. I mean, we've been waiting for them. But I realized that this has now become a white conversation. When I was at work and these two white coworkers of mine were talking about reparations, and I overheard them, and I was like, what are y'all talking about? And he was like, oh, we're talking about this new idea of reparations. And I was like, bitch, new idea of reparations? What? So I realized that reparations has just become a white topic of the conversation because of this election. And the reason that I want to talk about this is because, well, everybody else is giving their 2 cents, so why not give mine? But also because I really have a problem with the way this conversation of reparations is happening, and I don't feel like reparations is a solution that's going to help anything. And especially that the way this conversation around it is happening, I just really feel like it is being used as a real cop-out solution to actually solving racism and race issues in America. I don't like it. All right, so first and foremost, I wanted to look up where this conversation came from, right? Because I know Black people know we've been having this conversation about reparations forever, right? We know that. So I was trying to figure out how this conversation got passed over into the Yakubian community. So I did some digging, and I figured out that there is a presidential candidate who, by the name of Marianne Williamson. She is a New York Times best-selling author, several books on the New York Times best-selling list. Apparently she's very popular. I'm not familiar with her personally, but I know a lot of people who are. So she threw her hat in the ring for the 2020 election, and the platform that she is running on is reparations and repentance in America. So she is the person who kind of brought this conversation of reparations to the presidential candidate stage. And as y'all know, once one presidential candidate kind of announces what their platform is that they're running on, all of a sudden all the other presidential candidates get asked those same questions when they're doing interviews, blah, 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 right? So that's the reason why now, because Marianne has brought the idea of reparations to the table, now everybody is being forced to talk about reparations, which I do appreciate. I do appreciate the fact that this conversation is at least happening. I don't like how it's happening. So before I get into it, I just want to give you a little bit of what she has written in her own words. This is from her own website, mariannewilliamson.com. We can go look at her full statement, but this is just the first 2 paragraphs from her website. Our current racial dramas have their roots hundreds of years ago, and nothing less than pulling out those roots will heal the situation today. America needs to reconcile with our racial history, seeking genuine atonement and making meaningful amends. Until such time, tortured race relations will continue to plague us with more and more tragic results. It's interesting that we even use the phrase race relations, given how little we register that this is even about that relationship. A relationship between blacks and whites as groups in America is psychologically and emotionally dysfunctional, to say the least. And until this is dealt with on the level of cause and not just effects, we will continue to play out we will continue to play out over and over again this cycle of violence at its core. So that's kind of the basic idea of reparations in her words and the platform she's running on. Basically, she wants to give reparations to Black people in America in the hopes that that is going to be a way to heal the racism and race relations in America. So here comes my pushback on that idea. First of all, how the fuck do you figure out who qualifies for reparations? I know that white America is still convinced that every Black person is the same, but there is a lot of fucking diversity within the Black community and within America. So how do you decide who gets those reparations, right? Because this whole idea of reparations is supposed to be based off of slavery in America, right? So descendants of slaves in America. But how do you determine that? Do mixed people get reparations? If you are a descendant of a slave and a slave master, do you get relations? Do dark-skinned people get a higher rate than light-skinned people? Immigrants qualify because whether or not you are a descendant of a slave in America, you Black and living in America, you most definitely are a victim of racism and all of America's bullshit against Black people. So does this only apply to Black people who were slaves in America? What if you were enslaved somewhere else in the diaspora? How does this work? There are a million bajillion different ways that I can come up with where I can see a problem with how you would qualify this. Also, if I come and say, yo, bitch, I'm a descendant of slaves in America, I'm African American, how do I prove that? I don't have any paperwork that says that. Most of us don't, because guess the fuck what? White people didn't want us to have any paperwork. They didn't let us keep our history. They didn't let us keep our books, bitch. Most of the Black Americans' history is passed down orally by our grandparents and our ancestors. That shit has been passed down orally. There are very, very few written documentations that we have in our possession. So how is somebody supposed to come and claim and fill out their little reparation slave form and get the reparations? How's it gonna work? There's just so many loopholes, and I don't understand how you can equally and fairly distribute these reparations but to just the slave, just descendants of slaves in America. It's just not gonna work. You either have to give it to every single Black person in America or give it to nobody. If you can come up with a solution to figure out what specific Black person is allowed to have reparations in America and how the hell you verify that, please let me know. Because maybe there is a way, but I don't see a way. And when somebody asked her, like where this money would be coming from, she didn't have an answer. She just said, you know, when it's time for wars, there's no question about where that money comes from, which I get. But also, girl, you have to figure out where this money is going to come from and how you're going to distribute it. And she don't have those answers. So what are we doing? Second issue with her platform in particular, in this conversation that's happening around it, is the race relations in America is not just between white people and Black people, okay? I know that we love to have this conversation with race between only white and Black, but there's a lot of other people who were suffered against the hands of white people in America. How about Native Americans? I mean, we came and took their whole ass land, bitch, and wiped out half the population. Where is their reparations? What about all the Asian people who were thrown into concentration camps? How about the fact that half of this bitch used to be Mexico? What are we doing about that? You can't have a platform that you run on that says, I want to solve race relations in America, and then only talk about one group of people who have been disfranchised by white supremacy in America. If you want to have a platform and you want to have this plan to end the tension between white people and Black people in America, you have to have a plan to end that tension between all of the races. Because it ain't just white and Black people, okay? If you solve the white and Black people, guess what? We still gonna have problems with Asian people being discriminated against and Latina people being discriminated and Native Americans, bitch. There's a lot of groups that have been fucked over by white people in America. And if you're gonna have a reparations program to solve racism in America, you gotta apply it to everybody who's been suffering at the hands of white people. And you just have to. You have to. Which leads me to my biggest issue with not only her conversation of reparations, but the idea of reparations in general, is reparations does not solve any fucking thing at all unless we dismantle white supremacy. period. It does nothing. If I get a check today for $500,000 for my slavery reparations, great, fantastic, lovely, pay off my student loans, open my business, invest, great. That's a very lovely check. Does that stop police from murdering black people every 24 hours? Does that stop over sentencing of people of color? Does that stop school from kicking out our little black boys and girls for having natural hair that grows out of their head? No, it doesn't stop any of these problems that are fundamentally drilled into the core of this country. And this is again, why we talk so much about the fact that racism is not just, oh, you're mean to me because the color of my skin. No, the problem has become so much deeper than that at this point. Sure, a billion fucking years ago, sure, racism was about, oh, bitch, I just don't like you for the color of your skin. But because that shit has been so ingrained over and over and over again into society, it's become a deeper problem than that now. So you can't just get away and say, everybody get along and be nice and we all gonna live happily ever after. That's not how it works, because now it's become ingrained into our entire society. So unless we get rid of white supremacy from the core, from the very core of society itself, just handing out checks to people, while it may be nice, is not actually going to solve any problems with race in America. It's not going to do shit. Just because you hand me a check for $500,000 or however much money it's going to be does not going to mean that I'm going to feel safe to walk outside, or to be safe when I get pulled over by fucking police, or be safe because I know white men are up here shooting up everybody and everything everywhere. It's not going to change nothing. I'm just going to be $500,000 richer. And basically that's all going to go to Sally Mae anyway. So I'm just going to be back at square one. So what does it solve? It solves nothing. I feel like it's being framed as like this one-stop solution to everything, right? We just give the Negroes a check so they can shut the fuck up and we never have to talk about race again. No, bitch, not on my watch. That's not going to fucking happen. So that's all. Thank you for listening to me rant. As always, let me know what y'all think about this whole conversations about reparations down in the comment box. Are y'all for it? Are y'all against it? What do y'all think? What are your ideas? Let us know and let us have a conversation. All right? Please subscribe. Click that little bell so you know when I post a new video, y'all. And thank you so much. Love you guys. Bye.